All right, to our top story now. It is a deal that could have splintered relations between Canada and our closest trade partners. But just hours before the deadline, Canada and the U.S. finally reaching a trilateral agreement to replace NAFTA.
Prime Minister, what can you tell us about the deal?
Now, it took 14 months of wrangling, with U.S. President Donald Trump even threatening to bypass Canada in favor of a bilateral agreement with Mexico. The newly minted United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is a give and take, with Canada receiving a quota of tariff-free automotive exports, which safeguards Canadian jobs. One concession: increased access to Canada's dairy market for U.S. producers, but we're not out of the woods yet when it comes to steel and aluminum imports. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce says it wants more clarity on tariffs before the deal is ratified. Cabinet will reconvene in Ottawa today. Now, one of the many areas which would have been hard hit if auto tariffs were hit in is Oshawa, of course, and that's where GM in particular is. And that's where we find our Tammy Sutherland. Tammy, have you had a chance to speak to any workers just yet this morning?
Yeah, we definitely have, and we've broken the news to some of the workers here who've just woken up, come to work here at GM, and found out now that there will be no tariffs on autos that are shipped down to the States from Canada here. 2.6 million cars can be shipped down to the U.S. without any tariffs. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump initially had threatened tariffs of up to 25%, which really would have devastated the auto industry. So the workers who we spoke to today really say that this deal gives them peace of mind.
The tariff would have really put a real strain on the auto industry here in Canada, so I think reaching a NAFTA deal is good for everyone.
I'm just happy. I'm happy that they're not going to do any tariffs for us. Yeah, it's great. Keep Oshawa open, hopefully, and keep us going, keep us working.
Now, according to the new deal, the U.S. can technically put taxes on anything above that 2.6 million cars that are sent over to the U.S., but there are experts who are saying that that threshold is so high it's unlikely that Canada will hit it, and it's unlikely that tariffs will be put in place at all. So once again, good news coming to cities like Oshawa, where the auto industry is king. No tariffs will be put on any of the Canadian auto industry exports to the U.S., which is going to be great news again for anyone who's waking up and just learning about this deal that was reached overnight. Mel, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Tammy, thank you so much for that, and we'll bring you more on this new deal coming up with Mike Eppel in just a couple minutes. Meanwhile, to other news, is the tearing down of the eastern part of the Gardiner going to be an election issue? Well, it is, if hopeful Jennifer Keesmaat has her way, calling for a reversal of the city's plans.
The good news is there's a significant amount of land that becomes available, much of it city land, as a result of taking this structure down and instead building a grand boulevard.
Keesmaat says the teardown would unlock valuable land and reconnect the city to the waterfront. Rival candidate John Tory, however, calling her announcement a contradiction, pointing out that she was chief city planner at the time that the plan was designed, then ultimately passed by Tory and fellow council.
The fact is that the City Council, by a vote of 36-5, approved this expressway being moved and put in a new place where we could free up more waterfront land for development on a plan that at the time Ms. Keesmaat took credit for and said her wonderful staff had done a wonderful job, which they did, on putting forward this plan.
Tory also says the people of Toronto don't have time for flip-flopping on these kinds of issues. Keesmaat says her plan will save taxpayers up to $500 million, which would be reinvested into transits.